Hey everyone, this is Libertarian Black Man. Over the past decade, the price of prescription drugs has skyrocketed. 200%, 400%, 800%, even 1,000% or more. As a result, President Trump has drafted a plan to make it easier for Americans to access their prescription drugs. Unfortunately, this plan is fatally flawed, and I'll show you why. The Trump administration has outlined a plan to allow the United States to import cheaper drugs from Canada. The idea is that under the plan, states, wholesalers, and pharmacists would act as intermediaries for consumers and draft a proposal for the safe importation of prescription drugs that are already available in the United States. But then comes the fatal flaw, which is that groups would submit the proposal to the Food and Drug Administration for approval. Now, the reason we cannot import drugs into the United States is because the Food and Drug Administration bans them. They say the ban is about protecting consumer safety. It echoes what the pharmaceutical industry has been saying for years, that allowing imports of cheaper drugs from other countries threaten consumer safety. As a result, even though the prices of those drugs are lower in other countries, it is illegal in most circumstances to import those medications from other countries for personal use, thanks to the FDA. The pharma industry has said that this is to protect from potential counterfeits or adulterated products coming onto the market. What is interesting is that Senator Bernie Sanders, who believes in reducing marketplace control and having the government take more control in marketplace transactions, says that we should allow for the imports of these drugs because it would increase competition and substantially lower prices, effectively allowing market forces to guide prices. Now, this is a great idea, but that is also the reason why the FDA blocks imports, because it is echoing the views and interests of the pharmaceutical industry, which is to reduce competition and keep prices high. Because this is about profit, this is about market share, this is not about consumer safety. But it doesn't stop the FDA, and it doesn't stop the pharmaceutical industry from lying. The Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America, which is the industry's main trade group, basically a union, says that the importation scheme of the Trump administration is far too dangerous for American patients. They say there's no way to guarantee the safety of drugs that come into the country from outside the United States' gold standard supply chain. In other words, they're trying to protect your health, they're trying to protect your safety. They don't want harmful drugs to get to you, so they're going to block the foreign drugs. If you're not already laughing, then you probably missed it, because in fact that's the funniest part about this, is that they want you to believe they care about your safety. In fact, they care about their own profits, their own market share, their own money. That is the reason why so many drugs that they produce are already causing an opioid epidemic and lots of deaths per year from use of their products. So why does the FDA and the pharmaceutical industry have the exact same opinion when this opinion is flat out ridiculous, so that we got to block imports of drugs for safety? It is because the FDA is controlled by the pharmaceutical industry. This is not my opinion. This comes from someone who actually worked inside the FDA. They said earlier this year, opioid approvals are controlled by Big Pharma. And that this person, specifically, their name is Rayford Brown. He's an anesthesiologist who was the chairman of an FDA advisory committee, and said that the approval of new opioids is causing the agency to bow down to the influence of big pharmaceutical companies who want powerful new opioids to come onto the market. As a result of these very powerful drugs being on the market, 72,000 Americans died of overdose deaths in 2017. If they cared about safety, if the pharmaceutical companies were really looking out for your health, perhaps the vast majority of products that they are offering would be yanked by them off the market because of the number of deaths that they contribute to every single year. Brown says that while there are some inside the FDA pushing for guidelines that make it tougher for these opioids to get on the market, others, meaning the pharmaceutical industry, want these companies to be granted the chance to bring new drugs to the market and be done without the kinds of roadblocks that would keep them from coming onto the market. One drug that is a perfect example of how the FDA and the pharmaceutical companies are really one and the same is OxyContin. It was approved back in 1995 without clinical trials. Purdue Pharmaceuticals, which makes OxyContin, put pressure on the FDA, promoted the drug heavily back during the 90s, and made it and said that it was safe for widespread use. Well, OxyContin has a well-known reputation of being one of the strongest drugs on the market and has contributed to who knows how many hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of overdoses, addictions, and deaths as a result of its use. Another example is the drug Dasuvia, which is a more potent version of fentanyl. Fentanyl is more dangerous than heroin. Heroin is illegal. Fentanyl is legal. So make sense of that one. But Dasuvia is more dangerous than fentanyl. And this drug is made by a pharmaceutical company called Accelerex. Back in 2017, this drug was actually rejected by an advisory committee in the FDA. But a year later, Accelerex resubmitted the drug and it was approved. So what happened between 2017 and 2018? Was the drug made safer? Was it made less potent? Was Dasuvia redesigned so that it did not have the same level of danger in 2018 that it did in 2017? Absolutely not. What did change over that period was the makeup of the advisory board. Because the members who were on the board in 2017 who said this drug is dangerous, do not release it, were not invited in 2018 to be back on that board when Accelerex resubmitted the drug. And as a result, it made it through the FDA process and now is available on the market. Even more so, the FDA bows down to the pharmaceutical industry because that's where much of its money comes from. In fact, according to regulations that were changed in the 1990s, the FDA now gets 75% of its funding from the pharmaceutical industry, effectively making the FDA a business partner to Big Pharma instead of a regulator. These payments to the FDA advisory committees prompted an investigation by an organization called Science, which is a publication that looked into these payments. And on numerous occasions, Science, again, that's just the name of the organization that's investigating these payments, found that they failed to identify and disclose those conflicts of interest. The FDA did not disclose those conflicts of interest. The report that they drafted focused on payments made by pharmaceutical companies to advisors during the years between 2013 and 2016. What they found is that 40 of 107 physician advisors on FDA committees received more than $10,000 after they had voted to approve drugs from companies that gave them the money. Some of them made $100,000. Others made over $1 million. Again, that money is coming from the companies that made the drugs that they are responsible for looking over and deciding whether or not they're safe and approved those drugs. Once they approved them, they got the money. Also, 17 top earning advisors earned more than $26 million in research assistance or personal payments from the industry companies. The vast majority of those companies were making the drugs that they approved. These payments were disclosed in scholarly journals, but not by the FDA. So the FDA effectively did not want to expose this conflict of interest. It would make the FDA look bad. So the fix is really in. The pharmaceutical industry wants to make big profits off of their drugs. They cannot sell it unless the FDA approves it. But with representation inside the FDA, they can get their drugs through the process because they own the FDA. Like OxyContin was rammed through. Vesuvius rammed through. And other drugs rammed through. In the end, they end up on the market killing tens of thousands of Americans per year. So the idea that they are looking out for your safety is contradicted by the fact that they will sell a drug that they know is responsible for killing people, but it's making them money. They cannot make money from foreign imports from foreign companies. In fact, those imports will take money from them because they're cheaper and Americans will pay a smaller price for the same drug over a bigger price. So this is all about protecting profits, not about doing the right thing when it comes to safety. The solution to the prescription drug pricing fiasco is not to have a report be drafted by pharmaceutical companies and wholesalers and state governments and have that go to the FDA so that they can once again block or put strings on what imports can be accepted. The solution is a four-part one. Abolish the FDA. Get them out of the process of legalizing drugs. We should have a free market where prescriptions from all over the world can come here and be sold to anyone who's willing to buy them. The second thing is legalize all drugs, not just marijuana, but everything. We should legalize coca, opium, marijuana. Those drugs will be made safer in a legal market. They will cost less. They will compete with the pharmaceutical industry. These are all natural substances. The pharmaceutical industry produces synthetic substances, which are far more dangerous than natural ones. If we had total legalization of all substances, if we abolished the Controlled Substances Act, then we would be able to have a free market when it comes to prescription and non-prescription drugs. It would bring prices down and improve the health situation of many Americans. We need to eliminate tariffs on imports. These just drive up the prices of imported drugs and, of course, have the same effect as the pharmaceutical industry has when they raise prices, making it harder for Americans to access drugs. Last but not least, we need to cut subsidies for pharmaceutical companies because that makes them less competitive. They don't have to compete for consumer dollars by making their drugs cheaper if they're just going to get free money from the government. And they do. By the billions of dollars a year, they get tax subsidies and loopholes that allow them to get money from the taxpayer back no matter what they're doing with the drugs they sell. We need more competition in the marketplace for drugs. And that starts with getting rid of anything that raises their costs and getting rid of free subsidies and handouts from the government that make them less competitive. I talk about this in my book, Say No to Big Government. I talk about the FDA and the fiasco that we had with Vioxx 20 years ago, where thousands of people were dying from using it, and the FDA had that drug rammed through its advisory committee by the company Merck, which made Vioxx. It's a big scam. The FDA needs to go, and we need to have a free market of drugs. Get rid of these regulations that ban us from using natural substances, get rid of free money handouts to the pharmaceutical industry, eliminate tariffs on imports. If we take any other approach, I doubt we'll see any real progress on lowering the cost of prescription drugs. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel Libertarian Black Man and follow us on Twitter at Libertarian Black Man, and we hope to see you in the next video.